Welcome, everybody, to an exciting webinar interactive experience. I don't know what we're calling this, but it is a stream. It is live and is going out to multiple audiences all over the world. Thank you for those of you that are joining us live. Just a few logistics before we get into this conversation about data analytics and AI and how it can transform education. This entire event is being recorded. It is on YouTube and on LinkedIn. And I see some of you are joining us from both of those locations, as well as Twitter. And so if you want to go back and watch it later, that's fine. You can do that as well. We'll have an interactive section to this too. So if you want to actually jump in and comment on the platform that you're in, we will see the comments appear and I can actually have those flash up on the screen. So if someone wants to check in and say hi, I can show you an example of what that looks like. All of this, today's recording, this whole episode is made possible with our friends over at Microsoft. And I just want to give them a shout out here. They have a great platform. In fact, I think I can even show it to you with this fancy technology. Yes, I do. Here it is right here. They have this great web series that's out right now. It's an education series called Data Analytics and AI. And so I invite you guys to check that out. There is a link, a short URL you can see flashing across the bottom of your screen there, mrhook.it/AI data. And it'll take you to this page, which has lots of great different on-demand series that they're presenting. All of this, again, freely available. Great information is going out there. Of course, the world of AI is changing a lot of things right now, especially in education, but everywhere else. And so a big part of this conversation is around that, and then also how it affects those of us when it comes to data and data analytics. And we have our first shout out right there. Patricia, see, I told you. You put something on YouTube, you never know. It may show up on the show. So Plano, Texas, representing today. Thank you, right up the road for me there in Austin. But without further ado, it excites me to bring onto the stage several different experts from different fields. And we're going to start with Dustin Ryan. Dustin, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming to us from, and then what is your stake in this conversation? Like, what are you bringing to the table today?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having us on, and really excited to be a part of the webinar. My name is Dustin Ryan. I'm a data and AI specialist at Microsoft, and I work on our education team. So I'm working with our education enterprise customers across the United States, and my job is to help them be successful with Microsoft Data Platform technology in the cloud, not the least of which includes things like Azure OpenAI and the rest of our AI machine learning tools. I come from a professional data background. And so in the early days of my career, I paid the bills building data warehouses and doing data integration and all those kinds of things. But that's certainly evolved over time. And now I spend most of my time advising higher ed institutions and school districts and departments of education on their use of data and how they can be successful with using data to make intelligent decisions. And so really my stake is I want to help our customers do better things with data and be more intelligent with their use of data-driven applications.
I love it. And data, you own it because your background there, of course, Star Trek, we have some data with us. One of the best characters on that show there. Oh, and Rebecca's joining us from LinkedIn. Hey there from Texas. First event in multiple formats. Thanks, Carl and Microsoft, for this opportunity. Thank you, Rebecca, for being a part of this conversation. Let's bring up, the stage is going to get a little more crowded here. Okay, Mike Ribble. Mike and I gone way back. Mike, educator from Kansas. He's written a couple books. I'll let you tell a little bit more about yourself, Mike, and what you have to bring to this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Carl, for having me again. Being in the education field, I started off as a teacher, worked up through administration, but got the technology bug, 25 plus years ago, and just kind of been in this space. And probably two of my big pieces that I'm involved with is I do work in a school district still today, and so that's a big part. We're about 6,000 students strong, so it's kind of one of those mid-sized districts out there. So we kind of represent that. But the other side of it, I do some writing, as Carl mentioned. I've been working in the area of digital citizenship for just over 20 years now. This will be my 20th anniversary of writing my first article for L&L magazine, of all things, back. Shout out for ISTE that I did, talking about digital citizenship, and one time I thought that we would hit a place that we'd get stuck, and it'd be there wasn't anything new to talk about. But every time I turn around, there's something new, and I'll tell you, the AI stuff is just exploding. Everybody that's in education, the last 90 days have just been lit up I haven't seen anything like this since probably the early days of the internet, when we were first, jumping into that. So, and I also do teach a class in higher education. I teach a graduate level class, and do tech leadership. And as a matter of fact, I just mentioned to Carl last night we had a big conversation in my class
Yeah.
about AI. And a little shout out to Dr. Ali Kuros. He came into our class. Great conversation. Just some great stuff. But thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I like that you're bringing that lens's perspective of a practitioner, but you also have your feet in the higher ed space, which is a lot of our focus too today. It's talking a little bit about what higher ed is doing around this, as well as K12. So thank you for being a part of it. And again, thanks to all the shout outs out there, Thomas, Kevin, Darcy, everybody joining us as well. Last but certainly not least is Robert Fogel. And Robert, I know you're joining us from a storm-ridden land at the moment. So we're going to hope that your connection stays with us. But tell the folks a little bit about yourself, Robert.
Well, thanks, Carl. Yeah, I'm out here in San Francisco getting lots of storms, so we're not all that used to it. So internet's been out a couple times already today. So my background is, first of all, I'm an education architect, and I work with education systems across the U.S. and around the world. And I've been doing that for the better part of 15 years now. And my focus is more specifically on how data analytics and AI can be used to derive insights from data, and more specific, and then beyond that, take those insights and turn them into action, and ultimately to create a positive impact. So, my background is quite varied, and prior to doing being in the ed tech space, I also was taught at UCLA, taught engineering courses at UCLA, and also I used to work for NASA JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Awesome. Yeah, that's far out there. That was a bad dad joke, but I love the insight again. So we have global, we have outer worldly insight coming to the panel today. I do invite those of you again for commenting. Thank you for commenting and being a part of the conversation. If you have questions as we kind of go through it, feel free to post those in the comments. We may bring one or two of them up as well. I'm going to get us started with this one, guys, and that's let's set some ground rules here, first of all, because AI, like Mike said, it's been the rage the last 90 days. We've heard it everywhere in education. But let's kind of backtrack a little bit from this point going backwards. What is it in terms of education? How is it being used in education up until now, up until the recent, I would say, generative AI discussion? We'll go with you first, Dustin, on this one.
Yeah. So, just to, I think laying the foundation is important, Carl. It's a good question to start with. And, I think if you ask a lot of different folks, what is AI, you probably get a wide variety of answers. And I know in my adventures of, helping customers, sometimes they ask for things and really they think it's AI and they may not really have a clear understanding of what they're asking for. But I think at the most basic level, right, when we talk about artificial intelligence, right, we're talking about an organic experience that's happening through technology. So it's, a computer doing something that seems to mimic human behavior. And so it's just this organic experience through technology. And, whether you know it or not, you interact with AI probably multiple times every day, even the least tech savvy people that I think about my grandmothers. I love them. But they don't know much about AI, right? But they interact with it all the time. And so we see it with, autonomous systems that, smart buildings and things like where, you're automatically adjusting your AC or your ventilation or, controlling lighting and those kinds of things. You walk down an aisle at the grocery store, right, and the lights flick on as you walk by on the, to conserve energy and those kinds of things. But, we're all familiar with things like, automatic driving cars, cars that can see other cars on the road and will make decisions about when to stop, when to go, when to, veer left to stay within the lines and all those kinds of things. Within the world of education, I think those things are relevant too. But, where we have seen, I think, education evolve in terms of use of AI, probably in some of the things that most of us are familiar with things like chatbots, right? I think if you go to many higher ed institution websites, you'll probably be confronted with a chatbot at some point, right? As you explore the website. Students can do things like apply for admission right into the university via chatbot now, right? Students can, right, even register for classes, can get, I know of some institutions that even make recommendations about where's the best place to park, depending on the time at which your class is scheduled and where the building is at and what the parking situation looks like. And so we see all of those kinds of things. More and more now, we're starting to see a lot more examples of maybe integrated machine learning for making some really intelligent decisions about, who are the students that I should be engaging. If I'm a person who's in a role that works closely with students and responsible to some degree for student success, who are the students I should be prioritizing my time with in order to ensure that we don't have any students that are falling through the cracks in terms of things like graduation and being on track for graduation, or churning out of a university and maintaining student retention numbers and those kinds of things. The use cases are certainly progressing more rapidly today. And I think that in terms of AI within education, really the sky is the limit, and it's going to be really exciting to see how that progresses here in the near term.
Yeah, I want to touch on that point you were just talking about higher ed there and go to Mike on this. And Mike, I'm going to kind of ask at a different angle of this question. And that is, like, before this recent outburst, I'll call it an outburst. I don't know how else to call it. What would be some conversations or things that you've talked about with your students around AI prior to, let's say, the generative AI ChatGPT conversation? Did you ever talk about it before that, or was it part of the conversation with the students?
It was more in generalities. We talked about, the changing, structure, and a lot of times it was this far off, kind of concept. It was like, oh, we're talking about Star Trek kinds of things, and when we're talking about, this esoteric kind of, concept. And I don't even think that some of, our students even thought about, even chatbots being, an AI type, you know, piece of software that it was, oh well, it's, and usually you got these very generic answers of, you know oh, did you turn it off and turn it back on again? Did you, did you, those kinds of things that, it would have saved a whole bunch of, text, a whole lot of time and effort if they would have had something like that, to be able to just, be able to answer it in that sphere. But, it's interesting because, I heard a speaker, about a month and a half ago was kind of comparing, today, of course, at the time it was only like GPT-3, but it was, kind of comparing a chatbot to Marvel's Vision. It's kind of like, here's this very, simplistic, concept of, how you can use AI to, this more, utilizing, the whole structure of, not necessarily the internet, but at least the database information.
Right.
So, but we talked about it, like I said, it was more in generalities, but now it's so in our face. There's just so many programs now, we were talking about last night, that are using AI, and it's not just text. I think that some people think, oh, it's just, you put in a prompt, you put in some information, it kicks out, you say, give me 500 words on Romeo and Juliet, and it's going to pop out 500 words. I mean, the things that we talked about last night, were video and audio and, all of these different things. And I think, well, I know, and Carl, this for a fact as well, but education tends to get, they tend to curl back up a little bit
Yeah.
when these new things come out, because they're so concerned of, what is it going to do? And this one, of course, when it first came out, the first probably 30 days, it was all negative stuff. It was, oh, it's going to ruin education, and it's, all it's going to do is, you're going to have kids that are going to just take in, they're going to get answers out, directly, and all they have to do is type in, what I asked for, and that'll give it to them. And then slowly, after about day 30, it started to turn, and you started to get some educators that were being very, very thoughtful about it and said, I'm really want to embrace this. I
Yeah.
really want to look at this as an opportunity. And that's where, where I think I fall into this, is this, piece of digital citizenship is, how do we use these things in a responsible way? Because AI, just like any other tech, is a tool. It's another tool in our tool belt. It's something that we can use. we can talk about all the dystopian, taking over the world and all of those
Terminator.
kinds of
Everybody
things.
always goes there.
Yeah,
They go
I
right to
mean,
Terminator.
it's like, oh, it's gonna destroy us. But there's so much depth that we could, and now we're just really scratching the surface. I mean, I can't imagine what the next 30 days to 30 months will look like, because and I'm glad you have two people from Microsoft, because the things that I understand that they're working to build into Bing, and really all of the applications, and really bring it into Word and Excel and all of these kinds of things. What are some of the opportunities? And for us in education in the last probably 10-15 years, there's been a lot more data requirements for us that we're having to draw out. And to be real honest, a lot of us weren't trained that way. We were
Right.
trained to be educators in the classroom, working with students. And data, unless you went into a master's program or doctoral program, was typically not your main focus. And so I think that that's something that is going to be a learning curve for some of us, and figuring this out. But I think on the other side, I know we'll hit on some other questions, that there's some exciting things that can be done when we get there.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this up to Robert. And I know Robert had to drop out for a minute there. Again, the storms are raging in San Francisco. But we've talked a lot of possibilities, what we're using it for currently. I think there's also a tendency in what Mike just said, is that fear, or the curling up of like the belief, like, ooh, this is maybe something different or uncomfortable. We kind of all go through that first blush, and then it's like, okay, now can we just use it? Sometimes that could be good, but sometimes it could be a distraction. So I'll ask you this, Robert, like, how can AI really actually affect, or what do you think the potential for AI is to actually affect teaching and learning, and not just be like a fun thing? Now I can write a script in Shakespearean text or whatever. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, to Dustin's earlier point, AI has been around already for quite a while, and we've been using it, whether we knew it or not. At least it has been being used in the background. And what really has changed is the awareness, and kind of a democratization of AI as well. That it's becoming part of the awareness of just the average person now walking down the street is aware of AI now. And I think it has enormous potential. And, I'm asked quite often, what is AI supposed to mean to me as an education leader, as an example? And so I kind of break it down into three general areas in terms of how AI can be applied. So in one sense, AI can be applied to extract meaning from data, insights from data. And this is how we've already been using it for a while in this way. There's an enormous amount of insight that can be derived from data using artificial intelligence. Also, artificial intelligence can be used as a tool for teaching and learning, and that's becoming more familiar now, like with the use of ChatGPT as an example, how teachers can use ChatGPT to create lesson plans as an example, or even to grade an essay. And students can use it in a very constructive way to get deeper, richer understanding of the subject matter that they're trying to learn. The third way is AI as subject matter. So this would be, literally developing competencies around AI. So students are prepared for the future, their future in terms of use of AI. And, the saying now is that AI isn't going to replace a human, but a human using AI is going to replace a human not using AI.
Yeah, I like that. I like that layer of it. I call it human intelligence merged with artificial intelligence in some ways, right? And I think that artificial intelligence will never truly be human intelligence, at least not in the foreseeable immediate future. Although maybe at some point we'll get to Terminator, but and I'm not fingers crossing for that. But at the same time, there's some excitement that can come from that. And I'm glad you mentioned this, Robert, too, because I'm going to ask kind of a follow up to this to Dustin. We're talking a little bit about and I know, Dustin, your title, you're director specialist of data and AI. So you have this unique kind of merging of opportunities, and like we've already said, AI has been used for years in terms of the back end of kind of processing all this data and now making it maybe more visual or visible to our users in terms of teachers to actually use it for their students. So what do you see, or what are you seeing in terms of that, and how can it provide that greater insight? Like, how can we actually utilize it in a good way to help schools?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carl. Just to kind of also tack on to what we were just talking about, right? This question though, that about how can we use AI and data, right, to help schools, help teachers, help students, all the things that we think about, right? I can't remember a time when I've gotten on a phone call with a top 10 school district like I was a couple of weeks back, and the C-level leadership of this school district starts the conversation with, let me tell you about how I use AI today, what I did with ChatGPT, Azure, OpenAI. Like, that has never happened before, right? Usually I get on a phone call and they're like, hey, can you help us with our Windows licensing or SQL licensing? And you're like, well, and I guess
times are changing. Yeah.
But it's changing. And so it's incredible to get on a phone call with a school district. They're like, let's talk about AI. I mean, it's really insane. Really cool. But, I think, where I've spent probably most of my time working in education is helping customers build data platforms to address machine learning and advanced analytics use cases. And AI kind of falls within that realm, right? When we talk about advanced analytics and with regards to data and data platform and those kinds of things. And so, help really, I think what it boils down to is democratizing how we use data and how we use AI, right? And like Robert mentioned a few minutes ago, right? AI has been around for a long time. We've been using AI in a variety of different ways for a long time, right? But there have been barriers to entry to be successful with those things, right? You got to know how to write a lot of code. You got to have like statisticians and machine learning experts and all these kinds of things. And so to kind of get to that point, right, is difficult for the average school district, average university, right? And there's some that do it well, but I don't think it's out of the realm of reason for me to say that most aren't doing AI and machine learning well. But it's becoming more and more prevalent. And so one of the things I'm thinking about is how do I use OpenAI to surface and democratize advanced analytics? Can I create an AI chatbot experience that will respond to questions from a teacher or a guidance counselor? If a guidance counselor is looking to prioritize their time in the day, they probably want to know who are I'm just making up an example here, but this is based on what I've seen anecdotally with the customers I work with. Who are the top 10 students that I should work with today that are at risk for not graduating on time? I want to talk to 12th graders. I want to talk to 11th graders. I want to talk to 10th graders. I want to know who's off track so I can prioritize my time today. And so if I can identify these 10 kids, and I can say, and I want to know, well, what are the factors? What are the things that are leading them to maybe be off track or at risk for not graduating on time? Now, in the past, right, I'd need somebody who knows machine learning and statistics to be able to build some models. And then, right, then I can't just have a model, right? It's got to be easily consumable by a teacher or a guidance counselor or an AP or somebody like that. So I've got to put it into some sort of data format that they can make sense of. And we got to put it into some sort of report. And then I've got to manage it and update it and keep it up to date. And then they can get access to it. So we're talking about months and months and months of work to get to that point. Well, that's not really the case anymore. Now I can use things like OpenAI. I can provide an optimized data set for analytics, put OpenAI on top of it. And this is just one example, right? But then I can use that as a way to ask questions of that data very, very quickly using that generative AI that will generate a text response to a question, typing in the question, who are the students I need to work with today? And then it responding that to me. But we see that happening in K12 and not even like the largest, most well-funded K12 school districts. We're talking about even the medium and the small size school districts who don't have really deep technical benches. They don't have data scientists on staff, and they don't need to for a lot of these kinds of use cases. Now, I'm not saying there's not value in having people who know mathematics and statistics and ML and those kinds of things, but the advances in AI are such that it's becoming even more and more democratized to address these previously really untouchable kind of AI and ML use cases for the majority of our customers.
Yeah, we see that. I like that democratization of AI. I think that is definitely going to be the thing that we're thinking about going forward. I like this comment too by Rebecca. We talk about the accessibility part of that too. Like, where is it
Mhm.
in this consideration? I would also say, access in general and equitability plays into this too. Not everyone's going to have access to the same tools, just like we've seen in the past with education, especially where there's certain students that maybe get left out because they don't have access to it. So we're going to start seeing maybe a little bit of a split or a rift there too. I wonder if that's coming our way in some ways. Mike, let me ask you this too, kind of follow up to what Dustin was just saying there. What are you seeing in either the higher ed or the K-12 space right now in terms of that use of data analytics? Because as Dustin was talking, I was getting nightmare sweats about back in the day when I used to have to process all of that data in these spreadsheets and then put forward some sort of nice, pleasing PowerPoint to present to my board for less than a minute that they wouldn't listen to. But now, instead of wasting months doing that, I could have AI help me with it. So that to me, it definitely is an itch I want to scratch. But Mike, what are you seeing, and how have you used it for data on the back end?
No, I completely agree. I was, as Dustin was talking, I was turning a lot of, ideas and thoughts, and you know, the more that we can push it back towards the classroom, get it more to that level, the more opportunities I believe that we'll have to utilize that data and actually help the students specifically and be able to, address their needs. You know, the talk had always been, oh, we're going to have IEPs for every single student, and we all know that in education, if you have to do an IEP, it's, tons and tons of work because you're gathering lots and lots of data, lots of research, and pushing that all together. And if you had, a tool that could do that, that could bring a lot of that together, and you could on a Wednesday be able to help Johnny or Susie or whoever it is and be able to say, I see that you're having this issue with this type of mathematics. So let's focus on this. Let's help you to move to that next level. And the other piece, when we talk about higher ed, you know, I can remember 20 years ago, we were using programs like SPSS and things like that for, pulling qualitative and quantitative data and, mashing all of that. Today, I mean, the amount of not just data, that we can get locally, but think of the global information that we can now start to pull together. And, that is the exciting piece for me is that I'm starting to see a more of an explosion, especially on the digital citizenship side, on the global scale than I'm even seeing in the United States. I'm hearing from Jordan and Dubai and Malaysia and all of these different places that now that these things are so much more accessible, so much closer that it doesn't take a supercomputer that takes up a room. I can do it on a tablet, whatever that device is, and be able to pull this information together quickly and be able to assimilate it and put it out. Now, do we have to check? Yes. I mean, it's
Sure.
we want to make sure that we're verifying that the information, because it's still learning, and it's growing, and that even with GPT-4 coming out, that's still in its infancy. And like I said, the next 3 months, 6 months could be some real exciting jumps in some of these different areas. But I can't imagine being a researcher today and being able to pull all of that information and be able to show this is what they're doing on this side of the globe or this side of the globe, or and being able to synthesize that information. I mean, I look at my dissertation and I'm thinking, this is like I wrote it in crayon kind of thing, uh,
Hieroglyphics. Yeah.
I mean, and I spent 3 years of my life, writing that thing, and now I could probably say, write 10,000 words on this topic, and probably in an hour I'd probably have something written in in a format. So it's scary, but I think it's also an opportunity. And I think it was mentioned before that I think we need to embrace it, but we also need to show how to embrace it. And,
Right.
that it's not that we're going to just lean on it, it's that idea of, you know, humans with AI versus humans without AI. But I think you also have to understand it, and it has to be something that you wield as opposed to something that is being done to you. And so I think any educator needs to, you know, just say, you know, let's make sure that I'm using it for my best interests, as opposed to we're just doing this so we can, you've seen those people, Carl, everybody
Yeah.
that wants to use, all the cool stuff, and they do it for 6, 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden, it's gone.
On to the next thing. Yeah.
But I think it's a building process, and it's just like everything else in tech. And somebody talked about disability. I want to talk, a shout out is, tech has made big strides for those that had, low speech, less speech, and being able to give them a voice, to be able to interact. And I can't imagine that AI isn't going to expand on that. And that's an area that's exciting for me in the digital citizenship space as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. We just saw a comment come in that actually is going to kind of lead to our next question here. And I think Robert has actually been blocked out because of the thunderstorms gotten him, I think the best of them. This is a question from Mary from YouTube, and she's asking, like, what are your thoughts about teachers wanting to block AI tools like Codebreaker? That's going to kind of get to this next question, and it's a big one. And it's like, what are our, can we teach things that we're blocking? Or I've had this conversation for the last several years about teaching kids about cybersecurity, like how to hack. And people are like, well, if you teach them that, then they're going to, or if you don't teach them the right ways around it or the ethics behind it, then they're going to do it if they're interested anyway, and they'll do it, for more nefarious reasons, let's say. So what future skills should we be teaching our students going forward kind of now? And again, I'll say students is a broad lens. This is, from kindergarten all the way through higher ed, when it comes to this AI angle now. And I'll go back, Dustin, I'll go back to you on this. What are your thoughts on this kind of idea? And you work with audiences all over the world. And so interesting that now when you get those phone calls, they're not just asking about the Azure server anymore. they're trying to figure out, hey, how am I going to use this to work? Or what should I block? Or how should I open up? And, that's a big conversation.
Yeah, it is a big conversation. And, I think, one of the most important things that we could be teaching students, or really anybody, right? Because going forward, data and being able to understand data and make decisions based on data is going to become a part of every professional's life, certainly, right? And so I think probably instead one of the biggest things that we can be teaching is just data literacy. Teaching folks how to read data, how to understand data, how to communicate about data, and how to understand data within the proper context. And so it's more than just about like, hey, I need to be able to look at some numbers on a spreadsheet and understand what they mean, or just the numeracy of those things. But it's about understanding how to assess data and collect it, and how to work with it. That's often one of the biggest blockers to being successful with data focused initiatives, is that sometimes the organizations just don't have a data culture because the majority of their folks don't understand how to work with and how to use data. I think there's a place too, for anybody that wants to get into this space, right? You should learn mathematics and statistics.
Sure.
ML technologies, and those things are still going to continue to be relevant. It's not like, there's OpenAI and ChatGPT now, and you don't need to know,
we're done.
Mathematics or statistics, right? I think the point that, that Robert made earlier, right, about, humans plus AI versus just humans, right, is certainly relevant. I was having a conversation the other day. This was an ex-teacher who now works at Microsoft, and we were talking with some other faculty at a school district. And they were talking about how, the reason that students cheat is when they're scared, right? And they're scared of what's going to happen if they don't make the grade or something to that effect. And the students that are scared and tempted to cheat, oftentimes teachers, if they know their students well, they're able to point those things out pretty quickly when something looks a little fishy. And so rather than, thinking of AI and ML as tools and technologies that need to be blocked, right? Maybe we can think about, how do we use AI and ML to help a student who is scared about not
Mm.
passing a course or not passing a particular test or a quiz. What if we used AI and ML to enable them to get access to the resources that they need? So instead of blocking a student from being able to use AI and ML technologies, what if we gave them an avenue to say, hey, what are the resources I need to improve and improve my algebra score, right? Just as an example. And then what if AI could respond and say, hey, here's a study group you could be a part of. Hey, here's your teacher's office hours. Hey, here's the review material that your teacher went over when you were out. And so you missed that day. Maybe you don't know these things, right? And then what if we could quickly and easily surface that up? What if a student could do something like summarize the section on the history of Rome that they needed to write a paper on? And so then they could go and write the paper right. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can use AI and ML. And I'm really trying to encourage my customers to think about the kind of impact that we could have on our students' learning and things like our teachers' professional development if we use maybe some of these cutting edge technologies instead of just saying, hey, we're just going to block these things so that way nobody can get access to them.
Yeah, I think when you block it, you definitely you're setting them back a little bit. You're not giving them the same opportunities you were just talking about, Dustin. And speaking of opportunities, I saw this from Lori, just posted on YouTube. 22% of artificial intelligence AI workers globally are women. And this kind of aligns with a lot of what we see in industry. I know, gentlemen, we've talked about this a little bit. There's a lot of people that look like us, but there's not a lot of people of color in this space. It's getting better. Not a lot of women, and I have 3 girls in school right now, and I can tell it. They start to, right about middle school, high school, they start to kind of age out of the idea of computer science or anything to do with artificial intelligence. So that's another kind of bigger. I mean, I think we could do a whole webinar on that. We're not going to get into that today, but
yeah,
I like that Lori brought up that point. Mike, again, thinking those future skills, because as someone as you've written books on digital citizenship, so part of that is digital literacy, like Dustin was just talking about. How do we get them to understand and learn these tools and how to use them for good? What do you think are the skills, and is there going to be? Do you imagine a class around AI? I mean, you're teaching one right now as a professor, so in some ways, it is happening in the moment, right?
Oh yeah, it's happening out there, and as it expands, we're going to hear more and more about it. But it's getting it out into the mainstream, and it's getting past the fear piece, and it's really about help showing how it can assist in the classroom. And I think that that's where that once you can show and help them to really understand that, that's where it starts to break down some barriers. But it's that knee jerk reaction that administrators have, educators have, that they're just, it's going to ruin the educational process. Well, maybe we need to rethink the way that we've done things. And I saw one of the comments that talked about that AI could, really go after some of the old sacred cows of,
Yeah.
of the past. And I think that, yes, we need to still teach mathematics. We still need to teach statistics and science and social studies, and we need to do all of those things. But how do we, tie that, into how the digital piece works? I think that sometimes we try to write it on top of it and say it's something different, and really it's a blending. It's pulling those pieces in, and that's going to take a generation of helping our educators to learn, you know, how to use these tools. And a different course that I used to teach, we talked about a lot of different apps and different tools that are available. And one thing that I tried to drive home was, don't try to do all of these in 1 year. Some
Yeah.
people, oh, let's do 17 new apps this
In
year.
17
And
minutes, yes. Yeah.
yeah, and then 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 they're surprised when the students are using just Google to go out and do searches. It's because we fall back to what's easy and what's simple. But if we can build this and we start to scaffold these things, and that's how we talked about digital citizenship, is we're scaffolding ideas, building on safety, building on being savvy or smart about using the tech, and then being, in that social space, and how do we interact with it, is all part of that learning process. And I think that if we had that built in, and that's the tough part, it's that integration, that how do we show that as part of where we're building to our students, because I tell this to my my graduate students all the time. What is the goal of education? Is the
Right.
goal of education to test, or is it to prepare students to move on in their future? And I'm not just talking about higher ed. I'm talking about, to prepare them to be parents and to be, citizens, and to be, it's not about, you know, let's rush to the end line. And I think a lot of people, oh, I just want to get out of high school, I just want to, I just want to get out of college. It's always that next boundary, it's that next thing, that I need to move past. But if we could show, I saw one AP teacher was talking about, actually requiring the students to go out and do a summary of what they were going to write, and then they were to take that information and then build upon it from their perspective, from their information. But they had to show both of them. It wasn't try to hide it. It was, let's bring it out into the forefront. Let's say, here's the what GPT did, and here's what I did to improve upon that, and bring it to my perspective and show the humanity part of it. Because to be honest, you read a lot of it, and that's one of the things that a lot of articles will say. It's a machine written text. It's getting better, and the more it learns, the better it will be. But it's writing from a collaboration of information, and we're taking it from perspectives of life and our own experiences.
Yeah, I think you kind of are answering our final question here in some ways, Mike. But I want to bring this up, and I'm changing it a little bit because I think we talked about it's like what's next in education. I think that's a big, broad topic. I'm going to be a little more specific on this question, and I'll ask both of you this. And this is kind of your parting shot. So I'm going to give you 1 minute to kind of just, and it'll be you solo. I want to hear your parting shot about this. What's your personal hope for AI in education going forward? Like, what do you feel like it can do? What are the potentials? And again, Mike, you kind of hit on a little bit of this already. I'll let you kind of pause and think about it for a minute. Dustin, you're going to go up on this one. So you're up first on this parting shot. So 1 minute on the clock, ready, set, here you go. What's your parting shot on AI
All right.
education?
Parting shot, no pressure. I think AI is going to become an even bigger part of everyday life for educators and students. This is across both higher ed and K12. And outside of the world of education, for when you think about students, right, it already is a huge part of their life, right? They log into Amazon and Amazon tells them, hey, you should buy this because you bought XYZ, right? Or they turn on Netflix, right, and it tells them, hey, you might like these shows because you already watch these other things, right? So it's already a huge part of everybody's life outside of maybe the world of education. And so I think what we'll see over here, this in the short term, but it'll even be more pervasive in the long term, is just this world of AI being a part of everyday life. I'm talking about things like AI helping you build PowerPoint presentations, helping you summarize email documents. Can you imagine how awesome that would be to have a long email thread and just tell OpenAI, hey, summarize this for me, and just give you the high points out of like a 50 email message thread? Man, that would be amazing. But AI summarizing email documents, papers, writing code for you, building PowerPoint presentations, helping you consume information that's relevant, helping you translate information into other languages. I think really the sky is the limit with this. And I think it's going to become even a more integral part of everyday life for the student, the teacher.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, I get excited about this, and I think we're all getting to that point now where we've gone through the fear factor of it and are starting heading and trending toward the excitement part of it. Search Coach Trish mentions here as well, and then I like that Mary also has this comment about kind of pushing the point that programs and strategies support that critical and creative thinking processes. I think that's a big part of it too. We want them to be problem solvers and innovators, not the test taking like Mike was talking about too. Mike, parting shot for you, sir. What's your hope? What do you think? The world is your oyster, or AI is, let's say. What is it going to
Well,
be?
and I mentioned it a little bit before. It's really about, how can we help the students? How can we, really focus the education to them? Instead of it being applied to them, that how they are are involved in that process. And we keep saying that, we want students involved in their own educational process. This is an opportunity. This is for them to show, what they can do, but then we can then focus and really help them where they need that. And, to Dustin's point, it will be part of everyday life. And that's why we have to begin to build and provide that scaffold, that structure for those that are going through education and preparing them. Because some of the things we talked about last night was, think of all the mundane things. I mean, yes, being able to take an email and summarize it, but also maybe just to create an email on certain topics, that to be able to frame that. We do a lot of procedural things, and we don't do a whole lot of policy, but it could help with help to structure some of that, instead of going out there and just trying to build it all the time, that we're starting over from scratch. Why do we keep reinventing this? We have those tools. And to the whole $6 million man, I mean, we have the technology, to do this. So I mean, it's definitely, it's an exciting time, and I'm looking forward to what everyone, especially Microsoft, can do and help us to move forward.
This is definitely a conversation that involves a lot of stakeholders, not just the tech leaders, not just the professors of higher ed. I know we have teachers in the chat. I think, and by the way, just for point of reference, we've now referenced Star Trek, Terminator, and $6 Million Man. So pop culture plays a role as everything. But I want to thank Dustin, Mike, and Robert, who did, again, got dropped off because of the storm. I want to thank you all for joining us and being a part of this important conversation. This has been the Data and Analytics and AI to Transform Education webinar. Guys, this is being recorded. I'm going to send you guys off stage for a little bit. So thanks, Mike and Dustin. Wave to the crowd.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Carl.
And I want to thank also everybody in the chat, Mary, Patricia, Trish, a lot of you that joined in today and participated. Very active chat, very lively. I'm going to encourage all of you to, if you want to learn more information about this, make sure you check out mrhook.it/AI data. And it's a great website that Microsoft has put out there, that just talking about all the different things that they're doing around data analytics and AI. And I think what we hit today was just a scratch of the surface. You can already tell there's so many possibilities and opportunities, but from that, we also have to kind of narrow down and refocus our scope and say, are these opportunities actually helping with education, helping with learning? And I think that's a lot of what we talked about today. So again, thank you guys so much. Thanks to our friends at Microsoft. And we will see you at the next one of these that goes live.